Welcome to the Expansive CEO podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chapman, founder of Expansive CEO and X Squared Wealth Planning. Buckle in as we explore how to create true prosperity and build a business and a life that expands beyond yourself and makes a dent in the universe. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Expansive CEO podcast. I am your host, Hannah Chapman, and it is another Investment Friday episode. I'm here with the Chief Investment Officer of Juncture Wealth Strategies, Brad Haines. How are you doing, Brad? How's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good. That's good.
I'm
I
fine.
mean, it's been a wild first part of the week, that's for sure.
Yes, it has been a roller coaster. Um, just for everyone who's listening, in case you somehow missed it, Monday was Inauguration Day, also Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Trump was sworn in and put out a flurry of executive orders over the first, 24 to 36 hours of his presidency so far. And I'm going to say this just so that I can couch what we're going to talk about next. For anyone who is feeling frustrated, scared, worried, not feeling good, I'm with you. And that's how I feel about this whole situation as well. And at the same time, we've been talking about this, for even the last couple of weeks, we've said this a few times. Even if the next 12 months are super rocky and super volatile in different ways, and we don't really know exactly what's going on, and if there's stuff that you feel worried about over the next 12 months, especially, I get it. And over the next 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, we see a lot of growth and we see a lot of positivity in the US market, globally, right? We've got some really big innovations just in how we live happening right now. And so, Brad, I really appreciate your perspective on this, of what we're going to talk about today. So I did want to address, that giant elephant in the room for me anyway, because it's hard for me to just jump in and say, cool, let's talk about innovation. Let's talk about AI. Let's talk about all the cool things that are happening without also acknowledging that, hey, I am also in the camp that doesn't feel great about what's happening right this very minute in a lot of different areas. But I can also see and appreciate and need to be able to see all of the positive things, all the positive seeds that are being planted right now that are going to grow into something really important for the future.
Excellent.
What do you
Very
say?
good. I think that's right. I mean, I think, depending on who you voted for and your political persuasions, um, you can either be feeling great right now or you can be feeling not as great. All right. And so sometimes we tendency in finance or in investments to make decisions that impact our financial goals, um, based on factors like politics, which are terrible cues for financial market returns. So,
Mm-hmm.
for example, most Republicans would be shocked to find out that when Democrats hold the presidency, historically, that has been the years in which the S&P 500 or the equity market has done the best. Okay. Democrats would be very shocked to find out that historically, when Republicans control Congress, both houses of Congress, those are situations in which the S&P 500 or the equity markets have also done the best. And if you put those together, they are during the same times.
Right.
They are the, the best. The best results from equity market returns comes when you have a Democrat in the presidency and a Republican controlled Congress. Now, so if you got upset because Trump got elected, please don't let that cloud your ability to stay with your financial plan to achieve those goals. Do not change your portfolio strategies based on what you think Trump's going to do for the next 6 months to 12 months. This year could be rocky. He's changing a lot of the rules. Anytime there's a lot of rule changing when it comes to investments, that typically creates a little more volatility in the investment space and can be somewhat frightful for a lot of clients um, to experience. However, if you step back and take a longer term time frame, then there's a lot of good things, good reasons why we should be invested in the equity markets.
Mhm.
The thing we're going to talk about today is artificial intelligence. Everybody has heard this term. Everybody goes, I want to be involved. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the companies involved in it, the types of companies involved in it, and why it's such a big deal.
Yeah. And to piggyback before we move there fully, to piggyback on, the fear around who wins in the political arena. I have worked with clients who were very entrenched on both sides. And I can attest from experience with people, right, that I've had Republicans who were terrified of a Democrat getting into office as president, and Democrats who were terrified in 2016 of Trump getting into office, right? Like I have worked with people on all sides of it, and both sides that were really, really frightened. No matter what, they were like, I think we should just be in all cash. We just need to sell everything. The world's gonna burn. So I just want to be in all cash. And that level of it is irrational decision making, right? When it comes to your investments, that's what we are um hoping to help people calm down around, right? That so when I share that, hey, emotionally, I don't feel great about what's going on right now. Do you know what I'm doing with my portfolio? Absolutely nothing. I'm investing more, right? Like I am continuing to do all the things that I've been doing as an investor, even though I don't feel great about the policies that I'm seeing. It doesn't affect my decision making in my investments. And it takes a lot of discipline in some ways. And then also there is some optimism, right? It does take optimism about the future in a longer term basis in order to trust that the equity markets are going to keep growing in some way, shape, or form. And so if that's what we can provide here today to talk about, this humongous, literally life-changing for all of us trend, um, when we're talking about AI, again, yeah, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. We're we don't know what jobs are going to be available in 20 years or even 15 years, right? Think about like a social media manager.
Yep.
That wasn't a thing in the year 2000. Even two,
You couldn't even see what that would even be.
yeah, be like, what are you talking about? Right? Like, oh, this person is going to manage all like 12 different social media platforms and
I'm
right?
gonna,
Like,
I'm going to be an influencer.
right? Yeah, like that wasn't a thing. Even until the last, 10 years, really, I would say. Um, but we are in this innovation cycle where, yes, some jobs are going to go away, some jobs are going to change because of AI. But so many other things are going to be created that we can't even imagine yet. And that's what we're going to focus on for today. So, Brad,
Yeah.
let's
So,
talk about AI.
okay, let's talk about AI. Let me first start off by, you know, um, highlighting a news article that was introduced yesterday or was announced yesterday, where President Trump came out and um, applauded a deal where a SoftBank funded consortium of OpenAI, Microsoft, Oracle, MGX. We're going to essentially, they announced they're going to invest $500 billion into building AI infrastructure in the US over the next 4 years. So just in case anybody didn't understand that, $500 billion is a lot of money.
So much
That is
money.
so much money. Okay. And in the next 4 years, that is a lot in a short period of time. One of the reasons he announced it is he said, look, this is going to extend our lead in artificial intelligence technologies over China. And I view that as a national security interest. And so I'm applauding this deal that has been put together, and it's called Stargate. Fantastic, wonderful. Okay. But who benefits from that? Okay. How is as I an investor, why is this a big deal to me? Why is AI a big deal to me? And I'm going to give you a couple different examples. One, just like the internet changed how we how we do business and how we live. I'm going to describe my office when I first started in my industry in 1992. Okay.
So old.
He's so old. Actually, I don't feel it, but I do look it probably. So it's tough. So everything was pretty much manual. Everything. For example, when a client would want to check from their account, we would actually have to go type the check and sign it. Okay. And give them the physical check. If you wanted to execute a trade, you had to write a physical ticket and put it through a pneumatic tube. Yes, those old bank tubes. Okay. And it would suck it to the what we call the order operator. And then she or he would have to enter it on the teletype to the trading desk. Yes,
It's
that
crazy.
is how long ago that was. Okay. And then we got computers where you had quotrons. Okay. And a quotron was great. You could actually do order entry from there. All right. But the internet has expanded to all of that. Today, I sit down in my home office. I do all my work online. I can email everybody in my client list within 5 minutes. I can trade millions of dollars worth of securities within seconds. All of this is instantaneous. All of this is my analytics. I can do so much more detailed analytics instead of, because bear in mind, back in the day when I first started, you had to get the actual copy of the financial statements, the 10Q, the 10K, which are the SEC documents, which are required that give the financials of each company. And I would have to write it down in paper to analyze it. Okay. Now, Lotus 123 was really starting to come out. Excel had come out, or excuse me, Lotus 123 had come out, and Excel was just barely starting to scratch the surface of where they would eventually dominate. So spreadsheets were very, very new. Not everybody had them. My company did not have them, unfortunately. So that's why I got a little bit of a later start on the spreadsheet phenomenon. But today, I could not imagine the day I started what my day would look like with the amount of information and analytics at my fingertips.
Yeah.
How my life would be different, how I wouldn't even have to vacuum my house because I've got a little robot that does it for me. All right. So so many things have changed. The fact that we have possible remote work is an amazing advance. Okay. Like you were talking, social media manager didn't exist. Influencer didn't exist. Information technology, cybersecurity didn't really exist back then. And now it's a multi-billion dollar industry that is really a very, very big highlight of growth going forward. And artificial intelligence is going to do that for us. It is essentially going to revolutionize the way we live and the way we work. And we can start to see it by, the first, one of the first applications has been the chatbots, where you go to a company's website and all of a sudden, you get this little pop-up box that says, "Hey, do you have any questions? Can I answer any questions for you?" Right? You just type in a question. How much does this car cost? And then they will put you through an AI generated answers for any of the questions you may have, or schedule an appointment for a later call if the AI tool doesn't have those answers. That's one aspect, but there are so many aspects. For example, surgery. In medical surgery, a lot of surgeons now use robotics, AI assisted robotics to do surgery on a patient.
Hmm.
They're less invasive, they have better outcomes, and it's better for the patient overall. Okay. Well, there's a number of companies out there that are making leaps and strides and leaps in the area of AI optimized surgical tools.
Wow.
Okay. We all know about self-driving, right? That's been a big rage in the conversation over the past 2 years, maybe 2 to 3 years, with uh all
Waymo and Tesla and
well, Waymo and Tesla are probably the two most famous. I think Waymo is the most successful, even though it's the one that's not spoken of that much.
Mhm.
Um, but if you're in Phoenix, Arizona, please, I would encourage you, if you see a white car with blue lettering and a little big sensor on top, just know that that is a driverless taxi, essentially. That
Mhm.
is, there's only passengers in there. There are no drivers, and it's going to drive you to your location. For the most part, I haven't heard too many bad things about it. Um, so they're getting those millions and millions of billions of miles that are going to be necessary to train their AI tool for self-driving, specifically for self-driving. So there's lots of AI creations where the algorithms are being trained on data. And as that data gets better and better and more voluminous, those algorithms will be better at capturing um, the capturing all of the different impacts. Okay. So self-driving is, what if someone steps off the curb in front of the car, on a Friday night? What do you do? Well, the algorithm can tell you stop, and it will stop. Okay. The car. So, you know, the more data, the better, the more training, the better. And as time goes on, this is going to become much, much more. Um, Sky taxis.
Hmm.
Okay. That's another part of the mobile, the AI assisted mobile mobility trend, where right now we have cars, right? But think of a large drone that can take one or two people and fly them from point A to point B with no pilot needed, just AI generated. And because they're not going very high up, you're just going, just a little bit, and that you can skip all of that traffic. So those in Arizona, I used to live on the northwest side of the valley. My office, Juncture's company's office, is in Scottsdale, and it would take me, when I was there, it would take me 45 minutes each way to get there. Okay. Well, that's an hour and a half out of my day, which is not the most productive time on earth. And so a lot of people don't like traffic. Well, if I could pay $20 and go from point A to point B, from the place I'm staying to my office, well worth it. Well worth it. Okay. Now, to be fair, I'm not going to be the first one to step in line when this thing first takes off. Okay, so I will allow it, just like Waymo, to get a lot of miles under the belt before I step onto it. But the fact of the matter is, it's already starting to happen. There are companies out there that are using artificial intelligence and robotics to help move people with sky taxis. So that trend has already started. Um, Also, the home, and this is probably the most exciting part for my wife and my daughters and my son, is the fact of the matter is, within 10 years, my guess is most houses, or a lot of houses, will have a household robot that will clean the entire house. Okay. Um, we've all started with the little iRobots where they
Mm-hmm.
go around and they vacuum on their own. And when they're done, they just go back to their charging station. And that's fantastic. But that is just the beginning of that's just barely scratching the surface as to what we can do, both in making our homes smarter and to making our appliances, i.e., the robot, our dishwasher, or everything in the house, to work together as one networked system to provide for all of our needs and duties. So there's some programmable things that are good, but the smart house is going to become far smarter in the next 10 to 20 years,
Mm.
um, to the point where it's going to be your AI security system is going to be able to recognize a threat from a friend through visual inspection. So if, a burglar is trying to break into your house through the window, it's going to sound the alarm. If your son, who forgot his keys, was trying to break through the window, it can identify, this son lives here. I'm not going to set off the alarm. Okay. So it will be able to recognize people who are friends, and be able to do that. Um, Another part of AI is, which I think is fantastic, and I think is going to be immensely better, is identifying disease.
Mm-hmm.
So AI can right now. I just read a research report on an artificial intelligence algorithm that can identify breast cancer earlier than a clinician,
Wow.
and they're more accurate. And the mask has to be, it can be much smaller,
Wow.
and they can identify it much more accurately and much cheaper, right? And so, to me, for someone who is getting a little older, identifying disease is really critical, right? And if AI can be trained to do that, then that is a fantastic use. Again, I'm just throwing out some examples that I've been researching over the past few weeks. And I'm not even talking about, I'm just scratching the surface.
Mm.
Where it goes, again, we can't determine, because we just can't even envision where this will end up.
Well, and this, I always forget the name of this, the phenomenon, right? That our technology leaps forward.
The
So,
singularity.
is that it? Like it's like by magnitudes, right? It's not like we're taking steps, like step, step, step. It's like we took steps, we got the internet, and then from there, we got cell phones, we got smartphones, we have the internet in our pocket, we have like the magnitude of the change, the leaps that we make year by year are much, much bigger than what we've ever experienced in human history up to this point, recorded human history,
Yes. In
right?
fact, what's interesting is, so what I described was the singularity, which is where human progression in knowledge basically goes straight up.
Hmm.
Like, that's the increase in knowledge. And and that happens when we use tech, we find technology that will help us make us smarter than we've ever been. Um, One of the examples that I find is interesting is, they're working on AI algorithms to be able to code software better than current computer scientists or computer software programmers. So you have you have computer programmers that don't necessarily have to do the raw code. They take a step back and they review the code for any errors and then make some fixes wherever AI did it incorrectly. And that's what they're going to be. They're supervising the artificial intelligence coder.
Hmm.
And I think that's fantastic. I think that's when we're going to start getting some very unique applications for a lot of these things.
What's super interesting on that note, my husband is a ServiceNow developer, and an architect is the new position that he'll be moving into soon. And an architect, a software architect, looks at the entire ecosystem, right? And like how things are going to fit together and how like, okay, this thing that this team is doing needs to communicate with this other thing that this other team is building, right? So the architect has to be able to understand how things work together. One of his concerns, we've talked about this quite a bit in the software development side. Um, One of his main concerns with AI is that it's being sold as a replacement. The companies that are selling it right now as, like for enterprise purposes, is that it's going to make software development automatic. You're going to be able to, lower your payroll costs, and AI is going to write all your code. And the problem that comes from that is that it has to be like the environment has to be perfect in order for AI to be able to write code that's going to work. And almost every company that we have in existence has like a mishmash of we've got some Microsoft over here, we've got some PeopleSoft over there, we've got some ServiceNow over there, and we're going to mash all these different systems together because we bought them at different times of the business. And every single business has this. I don't know, maybe there are some software companies that, have super clean, tidy tech. But almost every
Mhm.
legacy business has a mess of tech.
Yeah.
And so their AI can't do its job on its own because it needs human intervention in order to make sure. Like if something's not working, it might be because there was a patch 5 years ago that some guy made or girl, and we don't know, like the AI doesn't know that that's there, but that has been like oh yeah, we just know that that patch is there, so we leave it alone. But now
Yeah.
it's breaking a system going forward. So
Yeah.
having his concern there is like, what's going to happen when we don't have people being trained, people being like in, um, you know, college graduates coming in at entry level jobs and having to like figure things out and then getting to those elevated senior management levels and understanding how the system works underneath because they had to dig in and find it and they had to figure it out. So now AI is going to write the code and they don't actually know how to fix things that are broken or understand where the underlying problem is, right? So there's an interesting when I hear him talk about that, it kind of reminds me too of the okay, like we're the true path for me, like what I kind of see is like this is meant to be a tool and a an aid for humans, not a replacement for, because it still needs to be guided.
Right. So I think it will replace people that do more repeatable and simpler tasks.
Hmm. I agree with that.
But I think there will always be humans supervising these various tools. I had a client once who was a computer programmer, sold his company for lots of money. Um, and he made the comment, he goes, software lives. And I go, what do you mean by that? He goes, software, you can write the perfect code and it will work 99.9% of the time.
Hmm.
And he said, but for some reason, that 0.1% will throw an error. Don't know why. follows the exact same code instructions that prior 99.9% did, but for some reason, some little randomness got in there and it threw an error. And he says, you try to fix it, but he goes, that's why software is always evolving, and it's always why programmers need to fix it. Now, what I also would say is if your job is to do something that is repetitive and um, not necessarily using creativity, but using, it's repeatable and it's pretty constant, same, you're going to get replaced pretty quickly. There's tool, obviously AI is a tool, right?
Hmm.
But that tool can help replace um, some of the more mundane tasks that we all have. And I think that's where we're going. You
Yeah.
know, we don't need AI to, like, for example, if you had a, back in the day, the term computer was for a person who actually made the calculations. Okay, they computed, right? What do you do for a living? I'm a computer. I compute. Okay. Well, that's how the word computer came up. Well, we then systemized it, right? We created the computer, we created the code, and now calculators and computers do all of that for us automatically,
Yeah.
right? So if you were a computer back in the 60s, you've been replaced. There's no such thing as a human computer anymore.
Right.
Okay. Um, so if your job is like that, technology is going to replace you. But that doesn't mean there isn't other jobs that will be created at a much higher level of skill, a much more probably fulfilling job. So,
Right. Or
there's
creativity, like you said.
creativity, human connection, creativity, pattern finding, all of those things are really, really in the domain of human intelligence. And so I think that's where it'll free us up to be able to be more creative and to do those things that we focus on and that humans are better at than computers. So I think it's going to be a great time. Now, how does this tie into the financial markets and our investments? Look, anytime we have an innovation revolution, what happens is we're able to lower our costs, our our operating costs, right? Um, if I have a website with a chatbot, I don't need a telephone operator to answer those questions, right? I already have the AI assistant to do that. Okay. So we can lower our costs. And as we lower our overall costs in the economy, our labor productivity goes up, meaning we can do the same amount of work with fewer people, or we can do more work with the same amount of people. Either way, we're doing more work per person, right? That increases our earnings per share. That increases our profitability. Increasing profitability drives stock prices up. That is what drives stock values is the underlying earnings and the cash flows as they grow. That's what rewards stockholders. And as investors, again, if you're looking out not this next 12 months, but 3, 5, 10 years, look at your time horizon. You know, if you're not 80 years old, you should probably be involved somewhat in the equity markets, the stock markets, right? Whether it's 10% or whether it's 100%, somewhere in that range, if you're younger than 80 years old,
Hmm.
and just to keep pace with inflation. And as those earnings go up and those stock prices go up, so does your portfolio value, and you get closer to those financial goals which you set for yourself.
Well, and in this innovation cycle, because we're talking again, like you said, 3, 5, 10, 15, even 20 years, right? From now, when we've talked about innovation cycles before, we've said, here's where we are in this innovation cycle. And right now, there's still a ton of actual infrastructure build, right? And that's what Stargate was alluding to, right? It was like, okay, we're still in the infrastructure building phase of getting things ready for when AI is really booming. And so those companies right now that are involved in building the infrastructure, those are the ones that are really at the forefront.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you see chip makers, server makers, you see data center builders, you see the companies that um, sell electricity. So the utilities that sell electricity to the data centers, the software manufacturers, you see all of those companies going up because we're barely scratching the surface of what AI is going to do for us. Like we're barely scratching that surface, okay? And so if someone can take a step back and say, you know what, I'm 40 years old, I've got another 40 years left on this earth or 50, okay? That's your time horizon.
Hmm.
Let's look at what these companies are going to do over that time frame. You know, what's AI going to do over the next 40 years? It's going to revolutionize the world. And that's where, in Juncture Wealth Strategies, we have um, a lot of investments that have a lot of artificial intelligence involved. They're involved in that. They're involved in that trend, that build out. And not to say we'll own them for the entire 40 years, but we're definitely always looking for those companies that are doing the next thing in that trend because we know it's here to stay for a very, very long time.
Yeah. And that's where, so we've got infrastructure now, software applications. Software applications are starting, right? Then there are companies, to my husband's point, there are companies that are selling these packages and they're big and they're expensive. I think ServiceNow it's like $1 million to get their enterprise software for AI,
Cheap, so inexpensive.
right? It's just totally fine. Um, so I mean, like these things are there, but they're not mature yet. That's that's the comments I get from him. It's like they're
Correct.
selling it, but it's not actually doing what they're saying it's going to do yet.
It will, but not
But
yet.
right, not yet, not yet. Um, but that's being in the infrastructure phase, looking forward to the software application phase of what that innovation cycle is moving towards, right? Like that's what we're looking at from an investment standpoint. And we can go on and maybe in later weeks we can talk about some of the other things that are innovating and other places where things are shifting and changing, where there's positive growth, positive outlooks for the future. You've mentioned before, like personalized medicine and different things like that, where we're going to see things that we have never seen before start rolling out over the next 5 to 10 years.
Absolutely. I mean, artificial intelligence as a backbone, as a tool, will help revolutionize the way healthcare is delivered and created in the United States. Well, actually, the globe, but I mean in the United States specifically.
Right. Yeah. So there we go for today. We'll wrap it up there to leave it on, again, like we said, an optimistic note to say, hey, you know what, over the next year, we'll watch the trends, we'll pay attention. You'll hear us talk about whatever's coming up, whatever's happening in the markets. Um, but truly, when we're doing financial planning, investment planning, when we really look at time horizons, we take that very seriously and we look at these long-term trends and it's we have to be inherently optimistic, I think. Like I said before, in order to even like be in this business, if you just think it's always going to crash, then you're just going to be in cash all the time,
Yeah.
right? Like,
And that's going to be tough to get your financial goals unless you save a tremendous amount of money over your career.
right? Yeah, and you can sit on cash, like fine, that's fine. You can do you, but in order to be in the investment side and actually helping people invest for the future, there is a level of optimism and forward thinking that goes into that. So
Agreed.
thank you, Brad, for being here. Thank you for being optimistic with me.
You're
Um, and if you have any questions, if you're curious about anything else in the AI infrastructure, phase. You can send us questions about it. You can get me at Hannah, Hannah, at expansiveceo.com. And Brad, how can people get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me at bhaines at juncturewealth.com or call our office at 480-253-4100.
Thank you, Brad. We will see you next week.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening, and be sure to like and subscribe. And again, if anything resonated with you from this episode, I would love to hear from you. Email me at Hannah, Hannah, at expansiveceo.com and tell me about it. And if you're ready for your greatest expansion, you can find ways to work with me at expansiveceo.com and at x2wealthplanning.com. That's X, the numeral 2, wealthplanning.com. So until next time, remember that there is enough. You are enough. And your birthright in this lifetime is to be expansive.